I'm Joe Field, and you're listening to the Geek Speak show.
You just heard from Joe Field, the creator of Free Comic Book Day. That is tomorrow as we record this on Friday. One of the books that will be available not at the stores, but on the Almighties.com. It's called The Almighties, Recharged, Reloaded, and Redux. And on to talk about it again is Sam Johnson, the writer. Sam, welcome back to the Geek Speak show.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on. So, again, this is called Recharged, Reloaded, Redux. So, first of all, for anybody who hasn't heard about the Almighties, and I don't know why not, we talked about it on the show the last time you came on. Tell us about the Almighties. Who are they? What are they?
Okay, well, the Almighties are a kind of eclectic super team. You've got, and they're kind of dysfunctional. Maxitron is I describe as an armored egomaniac. So it's sort of, if you take all the arrogance of a Tony Stark and take it further and pretty much remove everything that's endearing about Tony Stark. Miss F, who's his squeeze, is a former downtrodden housewife who's thrown off the shackles of her oppressive marriage, but she's still got issues regarding that, and she takes her anger out on crime. Nightfang is a cocky British punk who turns into a werewolf. Mason is a sort of a Punisher-esque type character who's a borderline psycho. And then you've got Stephanos, who's some guy that runs a takeout, and there's no apparent reason for him being on the team, but he's a man that's in much demand and does jobs on the side for Barack Obama, so he must have something.
Now, and you mentioned some of the references, but where did you come up with the characters, with the idea? I mean, what you mentioned, like, again, who they embody, like Tony Stark and so on, but where did you get the idea for each character and to bring them all together in a team?
Well, there were actually three of them were created by me, and Mason and Nightfang were created by co-creator Mike Gagnon. So they were all apart from Stephanos, who was created specifically for the team because he's in some ways the linchpin of it. They were all created independently, and we brought them together. And I make the parallels to Marvel characters, because though Maxitron wasn't originally conceived as being like a similar to Iron Man, apart from the obvious armor, the Almighties comic, the Almighties 1, which is out, is kind of Avengers parodying. So I've kind of made an association with Marvel characters from that. But they all, I mean, Mason, Mike has been writing for some time. Mason's had his own adventures. Miss F has made a solo appearance. So yeah, similarly to the Avengers, they're sort of standalone characters that have been brought together for a team.
Yeah, and again, like you said, it has been out. Number one, it has been out for a while. The Almighties, Recharged, Reloaded, Redux will be available starting tomorrow, Saturday, May 3rd, Free Comic Book Day on the Almighties.com. I have a link over in our guest link section. You guys can go there starting tomorrow and get it. So, let's talk a little bit about Free Comic Book Day, as a matter of fact. When did you first hear about Free Comic Book Day?
Well, I mean, I've known about it for some time, and I try and put something out on Free Comic Book Day. I mean, the Almighties things we've got out is it's not going to be out just for Free Comic Day. It's because the point of it is it's all you need to sort of get into the Almighties. We had a free comic book before called Almighties Origins, and it's got that. And it's also got extra stuff with Mason, because, like, if anyone that's read Almighty's Origins, the people that are putting the Almighties back together don't know Mason's origin because it's top secret. But so that didn't get revealed in Origins, but we've got like a bonus page with that. In Origins, Mason has just put out some smoke screen that basically is made out his origin is the A-teams. So all they've got is the escape from, the old A-team story, but they don't really know because he's classified information, but you get that as the reader in this. It's still a little bit classified, but where was I going with that? What was the question?
Yeah, no, I was gonna say actually, with that one, that's kind of like the Logan from X-Men. You really don't know his origin until recently revealed. So that's kind of what you get now in this one.
Yeah, I mean, the one I when we're making parallels to Marvel characters, the one I compare to Wolverine though is Stephanos, because he's like Wolverine. He manages to be in multiple teams at once, and whereas Wolverine's got the claws, Stephanos has got a great big slab of meat with a spike in it, so that's his equivalent. So yeah, but the thing is, the Almighties 1 is, it's a parody comic, but what we're doing now with the Reloaded thing is sort of moving them into, these are the Almighties in their own right. For example, the Almighties 1 logo and cover parodies Avengers. It's not doing that. This is, as I say, they were existed before we decided to do this Avengers parody comic and sort of tie them up in that. And this is freeing them up for, well, I mean, Mike and I are working on a mini series at the moment, and it goes somewhere very different. So while it's the Almighties is always going to be a comedic book, and some of the characters certainly lean heavily in that direction, such as Nightfang, you just want to hit. It's no longer so much of a parody as, it's a comedic superhero book, and it stands on its own right. But whereas the Almighties one, which was very well received, it's sort of taking nice pot shots at all the sort of big Marvel events and tropes.
Yeah, we'll talk about free comics in a minute, but let's stick with the Almighties for a second. Besides yourself, who else is behind? Who draws it? Who's illustrating? Who's the team behind the Almighties?
Yeah, okay. Well, there's a few. There's a new cover artist who's just come on with the Origins / the Redux book, and that's Juan Ramirez, and he's sticking around. We've already got Almighty 0 finished, which is what this preview is actually. A chunk of it is previewing Almighty 0, and everyone's really liked his his first cover. So he's around. Eleonora Cortazar is, I guess, the artist that has been involved most, and she's going to be involved in the 0 as well. Pablo Zambrano. Those are the main ones. There's a few artists involved, but I mean, in terms of the Recharge, I think those are the main ones. There's like Ron Gravel did like Nightfang's 2-page origin story, which is a kind of American Werewolf in London parody, and that was kind of his style particularly suited that. And what we tried to do with the Almighties is we've used the right artists for the right stories. Like the Almighties one has 3 sort of missions within it, each one illustrated by a different artist, and it's playing to those artists' strengths. So yeah, there's a number involved, and Mike and I co-write it.
Yeah, so you can see that team put together this team, the Almighties, on the Almighties Recharged, Reloaded, Redux, again starting tomorrow, and from then on. Free Comic Book Day is going to be available on the Almighties.com. I have a link up on the guest link section. You guys can go there starting tomorrow, Saturday. But let's go, like I was saying earlier, Free Comic Book Day, its mission is to bring two things. One, to bring back people who left comics, and also to introduce new readers to comic books. Now, in your opinion, you think it's been doing that with all the offerings we get on Free Comic Book Day?
Yeah, I mean, it always puzzles me a little bit, the sort of marketing between your big comic films and comics themselves. The crossover, I think, more of it could be made. I mean, I would have thought that with and I may be wrong, but I believe with Spider-Man 2 out now, there isn't like a free comic book day for Spider-Man. I mean, Marvel have got Guardians of the Galaxy stuff out for it, which I understand, that is going to tie in to, well, I mean, I guess thinking it through, it's probably something to do with Fox, being Spider-Man and Marvel being Guardians of the Galaxy. But I would have thought, especially given that, they've timed the release of the new Amazing Spider-Man 1 to come out when the film was out, I would have thought it would be a good idea to have, a free comic book, that maybe add a chunk of that in it to introduce people to, well, reintroduce people to Spidey, or get people that have seen the film into Spidey. So I don't think it's, it doesn't utilize things as well as it could in that sense. I've noticed things like that before, but I mean, it is, it's an event. I think where I'm in the UK, it's not such of a big thing, but I know in America that, they have, individual comics put on big shows for it. And no, I mean, it's a good thing. It gets attention, it gets coverage, it gets people into comic shops. So there's no question it's a good thing. And also, you'll get people, if you've got people that maybe typically only buy Marvel or DC, they might, try one of these indie comics that are there beside them on the free comic book day rack.
Yeah, that's one thing about was like our free comic book day. You're right. It's not just the big three, I guess, if you want to include Image in that.
No.
But everybody gets in on the act. The independents, they're not independent, but well, sort of. But Dark Horse gets in on the act, and it's not just okay. Here's the book, whatever. It's also new series are launched on Free Comic Book Day, with the hope that if you get the free comic, you'll come back and become a regular customer on Wednesday.
Yeah. I mean, there is a huge amount coming out this year. I mean, I've seen previews of a lot of the books coming out, and it is, to use the cliche, there is something for everyone, because there's stuff for all ages, and plenty of books that aren't superhero related. So it looks, I don't know if it's more than usual, in fact, but there's a whole load out. So guaranteed, anyone that goes in to a comic shop, unless they absolutely despise comics and have been dragged in there kicking and screaming, they're going to find something that will appeal to them.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point there, Sam. And I'm over here. Obviously, you're across the pond, as they say. Over here, I see it's not a secret. We all know the comics industry was struggling, mid to late '90s, and they're doing okay now. I think they are. Is it going to get to the point where, because of the movies, instead of helping, they're actually burning people out again on comics and on the comic book related movies?
I don't think it burn people out. It always, as I say, it's a puzzler that they've never, as successfully as they could have, so far managed to create that sort of crossover market. I mean, I have a friend at work who, at the day job, who absolutely goes nuts for like the Marvel movies and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and he'll never buy a comic. And I'm like, and he's, he's so enthusiastic about these films and reading them all online. And I've tried to get some understanding from him as to why this doesn't translate into him buying comics, but it doesn't. And I know, that's the case with a lot of people. I've always said, like, someone that will go and see a Spider-Man movie will still, a lot of times, regard a Spider-Man comic as being just for kids and not something they'd be interested in, which of course isn't the case. But yeah, I mean, this is, to me, this is kind of the $64,000 trick, if it can be pulled off, because the Avengers' biggest movie all time, Captain America: Winter Soldier, absolutely huge.
Yeah.
There's no real reason why that shouldn't translate into a massive increase in comic sales, but for some reason, whatever needs to be done to achieve that is not being done as successfully as it could.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, because I have heard people talk about that in comic book stores and in theaters, obviously, where they love these movies. Like we just saw Amazing Spider-Man 2 last night, but they love the Avengers, all these movies. But they refuse to pick up the comic book because, like you said, yeah, it's for kids. It's for kids. Oh, not really, because the movie you just watched, where do you think the stories came from? It's from the book.
I mean, yeah, there's that for starters, and also the movies are generally got to be sort of diluted a bit to make them more palatable, across the board. So, I mean, if you look at the Amazing Spider-Man films versus what's been going on in Spider-Man recently with Doc Ock and all taking over his body and all that twisted, freaky stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, that stuff was not for kids. He was, he was killing villains. He was doing all kinds of stunts. So, yeah, it's a misconception, and it's a funny one because so much has been done about adult comics and Watchmen and all that, but there still is that perception, and I think to some degree it may be on a kind of subconscious level, because I think a lot of people are clued up, and partly due to seeing these films, that these aren't just for kids, but there's just still something there that is preventing them from going and, oh, I saw the Avengers movie, I'll go and buy the Avengers comic.
Yeah, and one thing that's really being helped is, and it's not talked about a lot, and that's your side, the creative side. These movies, while there may be or may not be an audience burnout, we'll know if it happens. But kids who are going to school to learn graphics, to learn how to do visual effects, I mean, these movies are inspiring them they're telling them basically, hey, no, you're not wasting your time in school because we got all these movies coming out. This is what you can do. So it's inspiring the creative side of it also.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what Marvel themselves are doing is great. I mean, even Shield, which was a lot of people found it hard going at first, but now they've tied it into the bigger picture with the whole
The Winter Soldier. Yeah.
No spoilers about Winter Soldier, but how they tie it into Winter Soldier. Yeah, it's completely shaking it up, and that is the strength of what they're doing, because I remember as a kid always getting a buzz out of it used to be less commonplace that you'd have, say, Iron Man showing up in Thor's book and big crossovers like Secret Wars. Now it's a lot more common, but you kind of get that sort of old feel in the film and the TV side of Marvel when they mention Tony Stark and all that, and it's that is part of what makes the Marvel universe great. It is this shared universe, and I think that's one of the biggest strengths of what Marvel are doing with their films and TV. Shields, as I say, it didn't hold my interest, but since they've started tying it in first to the Thor film and then to Winter Soldier, I'm there, and it's given it a massive shot in the arm.
Yeah, Hell Hydra. But like I said, yeah,
no spoilers.
Right.
Well, everyone's seen it by now. Christ's sakes, if you haven't, what are you doing?
Exactly. But Sam's creation, The Almighties, Recharged, Reloaded, Reduxed, again, going to be available starting tomorrow, Free Comic Book Day. Not just for tomorrow; it'll be available from then till whenever, forever. Sam.
Yeah, and until we're all long dead. Yeah.
Well, we'll be dead, but the Almighties will be there. The
Almighties will live on.
Yeah. So you can find it again. We have a link up on the guest link section, thealmighties.com, if you want to go there directly. Sam, thanks a lot for coming on. You're always welcome here. We'll talk about anything you have coming up. Keep me abreast of everything that you do, and we will have you on here and geek out about whatever project you have going. Okay?
Great. Thanks again for having me.
All right, Sam. Have a good one.
Cheers.